We understand an upside-down world, but they're writing us off before we get to the starting line. A stalled generation? Who do you think is gonna fix all this? We will, because our future is the future. So we're going to build bridges and hospitals in a day and feed those left in the cold. We're going to do all this and more because we have an appointment with destiny.
Or Swami-esque knowledge. On to Division 2, Aaron. We've got Otay Ranch and Scripps. Otay,
Whew.
this is one of the first one seeds that we've talked about now in a couple of
Thank
podcasts.
goodness, right?
Little survive and advance. Scripps Ranch, they are the 4 seed. So a 1 versus a 4. And then University City, well, they're an 11. So, we're back to chaos. They got to take on a 2 in Lincoln. So Otay Scripps, UC Lincoln. We are now the opposite of what we did when we introed the D3 podcast, where we were saying that, these are some cool sort of hipster underground story. We're talking about established brands now. Like, these are all teams that we have talked about, either with the exception of University City getting top 10 votes this year, or just either we've just, they've been around. They are not, like they came out of nowhere with the basketball culture. We know what a fair amount of these schools bring. I think right now, if I had to assume that this goes one of 2 ways, chalk or not chalk, I would still think that this goes chalk and we end up with an Otay Lincoln final. But that's why it just has a generic background behind me, and it says full-time basketball behind you. So I'm curious your thoughts on this first game. Let's go Otay Scripps first.
Again, it's all about momentum, and I feel like Otay's doing a good job of, surviving and advancing. They had a really tough game against an Eastlake opponent that they've played twice before during the season. Eastlake came out with a great game plan. It was a 1-point game at the end of the third quarter, and then Otay pulled away late. I think that just the grind of playing in the Mesa League this year, it's interesting. I think that playing in a league like that prepares you for the playoffs, but it also can physically beat you up. And I think that Scripps Ranch is, went almost undefeated in the league. I think they finished 7-1. They got better progressively as the year went on. Once they got their transfers, Micah Brickner, Kai Brown, and company, they really took off. And I actually think the Scripps will win this game. I think it's going to be a very close matchup. But I think Scripps matches up very favorably with how Otay plays. Otay brings a lot of depth to the table. Scripps Ranch has a lot of depth. I think Otay has solid guard play. I think that Scripps might actually have better guard play this year with Brown, Jaden Shuby, Jonah Dawson. Jonah Dawson, and a couple of other guys. I mean, and Aubrey Thompson, who's been a revelation this year. This was a guy who didn't make the team last year and has emerged as a starter. And then I think the X factor is that Micah Brickner might be just as good, if not better, than any of the front court players that Otay has. I mean, Adam De La Cruz is really good. I think Percy Whitaker has been he's an undersized 3-4 who kind of he has to play that position because he rebounds it so well. I prefer him, next level on the perimeter because he's built like a guard. But I think that Brickner's explosiveness, his athleticism, his rebounding, his motor, and the fact that he can shoot the ball as well poses a bit of a mismatch. And I think that Scripps will pull it out. I do.
I'm here for it. I love it. Let's talk about the other game then. University City and Lincoln.
I think this is the more straightforward one. I think that Lincoln is just on an absolute tear right now. I thought that the Lincoln Vista game would be closer, and all Lincoln did was just blow the doors off them from first quarter on. It was, wasn't very close, and that tells me right now that Lincoln is they are playing with a singular focus, and their focus is to win a title. They've done everything else. I mean, Kyle and King won Player of the Year in that league. They went undefeated in the City League. it was unfortunate that they slipped into the City League this year. I wanted them to stay in the Eastern, which would have been, a really good challenge going up against Scripps twice in the year, Coronado twice. That, those games I think would have been a lot. They would have been better for those games than beating up on, on Morse, Christian, Point Loma, and La Jolla during league. But they were able to stay sharp, win a few really good showcase games during that stretch, and beating Scripps Ranch was kind of like one of the high water marks. Beating El Camino was the one that told me, okay, they're definitely for real. And I think that you talked about established brands. They're one of the more underrated established brands over the last 4 seasons. I mean, I think people forget they were in the Division II finals in 2019. The year before, they were also really good. They made the Division 3 quarterfinals. Unfortunately, both of those, both the quarterfinals and finals, they met up with San Diego, and that was the end of their season.
You can tell the truth,
but
your seed whooped that ass. The spawn of the Burgin line opened up a can on the Centurions.
I will say this: he had their number during that stretch. That was one of the fun things. But again, a Division III quarterfinal appearance, a Division II championship appearance, and now they're right back in the D2 semi. So this isn't a fly-by-night operation. They've been good for a while, and then of course, way back. I don't, if anyone remembers in 2011 when they had the Holden kid who I want to say they beat Cathedral in the Division III championship game that year. And I think that team also included professional football player Tim Patrick was on that team.
And if you scratch back just a couple years before that 2011 team, they were also in 2 other finals in 2007 and 2009. They both took big fat L's to La Jolla in.